a clay cylinder sealed into the brickwork of a tower at Ur. Nabonidus, the last Babylonian king, puts it there. The tower is already ancient. He is rebuilding it. On the cylinder, he sets down what the old inscriptions told him. A king named Ur-Nammu began the work and did not finish it. Shulgi, his son, completed it. Nabonidus repairs it on their foundations, in bitumen and baked brick. Kings here bury their building records beneath the temples they raise. An inscribed tablet, a figure of the king with a basket of earth on his head, the load of a builder. To read them, Nabonidus sends men to dig. He has done it before, at Sippar, lifting a stone laid by Amar-Sin of Akkad and trying to reckon how old it was. The kings he is reading have been dead more than 1,500 years. The tower was raised by a king who took the kingship of Ur out of a broken country. At Girsu, a man named Gudea runs the city and the country around it. He does not call himself king. He uses the older title, the one Lagash gave its rulers for generations. Above him are the Gutians. 30 kilometers away at Umma, a ruler dates his building inscription by their king's reign, the way a man records whose permission he is operating under. Gutian power still hangs over the south, though how much of it reaches Gudea is not certain. The Eninu is the temple of Girsu, Girsu's god, and Gudea rebuilds it. For more than a century, archaeologists knew it only from his own texts and a plan carved on a statue. Then, an excavation at Tello found a stone with an inscription on it, naming the king and naming the temple, and the building came out of the ground. 2 clay cylinders record the work. Just over 1,300 lines, the longest literary composition surviving in Sumerian, and most of it is about a building. He puts himself in stone too, in a hard, dark rock carried in by sea. Around 20 statues have been dug up at Tello, some seated, some standing. His hands are folded. And all of it is happening while Ur rises. Utu-hegal, king of Uruk, raises an army and goes after the Gutians. He takes their last king, Tirigan, and puts a foot on his neck. His victory inscription survives only in copies made centuries later. In it, Enlil charges him with bringing the kingship back to Sumer. His reign is short. At Ur, his governor is a man named Ur-Nammu, who sets up a stone there for the life of the king he serves. The King List says only that Uruk was defeated. Utu-hegal goes, and Ur-Nammu is king. He calls himself King of Ur. Then he adds a second title, King of Sumer and Akkad. The old empire has been gone for a lifetime, yet its name is in the title. The years of his reign are named for what he does in them. 8 survive. The year the roads were put in order, the year the temple of Ninsun was built, the year the wall of Ur was finished. He also goes east. 2 broken stone vases found here carry the same inscription. The king smote Susa and turned it into booty. The city sits out past the Tigris on the Elamite side, and now it answers to Ur. He raises the tower, a ziggurat, a mud core under baked brick, stamped with his name. 3 stairways climb to a gate in the parapet. Small holes run right through the casing to drain the filling. Much of what you see today went up in the 1980s. The form is old. More than 1,000 years before, Uruk raised its temples on platforms and kept building them higher. Ur-Nammu takes the habit and makes it enormous. The same work goes up at Eridu and at Uruk itself. Nippur, too, where Enlil decides who holds the land, and a king who wants it goes and asks. Beneath each one, he buries a figure of himself, stripped to the waist, the basket balanced on his head. He walls the city. The structure itself is gone. The proof is bricks found reused inside the town, stamped to say what they were molded for. The rampart it stood on is about 8 meters high. He rules 18 years. The lament composed under his son says how he dies. It has him abandoned by the gods on a battlefield, his donkeys buried with him. Shulgi is at war in the east for the second half of his reign. It begins with Anshan, out past Susa, Simuram, up in the Zagros, Urbalam, further north. Simuram again, 1 year name has it destroyed along with the Lulubi for the 9th time. He holds more ground than his father ever did. Around then, the scribes start writing Shulgi's name with the sign of divinity. One place at Ur catches the change. Shulgi builds a temple there for the goddess Nimintabba, and the foundation tablet he buries in it calls him king of Sumer and Akkad. Under its pavement lie cylinders with a different title. King of the 4 quarters, with the divine sign before his name, the same as Amar-Sin. The sign does not reach Shulgi's father. Ur-Nammu gets funerary offerings, but his name is never written with it. People start naming their children after the king. 267 of these names survive, and almost everyone has a matching form built on a god's name. Shulgi also builds for himself a tomb at Ur with a house placed on top. It has the plan of somewhere a man would live, a courtyard with rooms off it. Some of them have altars against the walls, and the clerks write everything down. At least 120,000 tablets survive in collections around the world. Sheep, barley, silver, days of work owed, and days of work done. Almost all of them come from 5 places. 4 are old cities: Umma, Girsu, Nippur, Ur. And most of the tablets are from the second half of the dynasty, so the record is thickest just before it stops. The 5th is new. In his 39th year, Shulgi founds Puzrish-Dagan beside Nippur. The mound is Drehem. Animals arrived from the provinces are counted and sent on to temples and officials and the palace kitchens. In 1 year, something like 77,000 animals passed through. Its tablets started appearing on the antiquities market in 1909. They went to London, Paris, New York, Chicago, and into private hands, and nobody dug the site under controlled conditions until 2007. The best documented state of the 3rd millennium, and the tablets of its livestock office reached museums with no record of where they had lain. Weights turn up all over Ur. Woolley's excavations produced more than 350 from every period the city was lived in. Most of them run to one standard, a shekel of about 8.5 grams, 60 to the mina. A half-mina weight of Shulgi's survives, cut with the moon god's crescent. The inscription ends with one word: checked. A law collection belongs to these years too, usually given to Ur-Nammu, sometimes to Shulgi. If a man puts out another man's eye, it says, he weighs out half a mina of silver. 3 centuries later, Hammurabi will answer the same injury with an eye. And there are hymns in the king's own voice. Every excavated copy of both was written centuries after Shulgi died by students learning to be scribes. One copy of the King List was made while Shulgi was alive, and dedicated to him. It is the oldest that survives. Kingship comes down from heaven. It passes from city to city, one at a time. And in this one, it ends at Ur. Underneath all of it runs an arrangement the tablets call the barley. The provinces take the burden in turn, month by month, feeding a pool the center draws on. The old cities of the plain pay into it. The lands out at the edge, held by military governors, send cattle instead. The biggest workforces on record are in the weaving mills. Not one has ever been dug up. What survives is brick. Millions of them, stamped with the king's name, carried up the side of the ziggurat one at a time. On one, a dog walked across the wet clay and left its prints. The workers are women. One account of the mills at Lagash runs to nearly 10,000 people, 3,000 of them children counted in the same list as their mothers. It is the foreman the state holds to account. Whatever his gang does not do stays on his tablet as a debt, which is why the sheets carry a line for the ones who died, and a line for the ones who ran. Shulgi's successor is Amar-Sin, and he rules 9 years. He works on the unfinished ziggurat at Eridu, where the bricks are still stamped with his name. He fights the same frontier. About 100 tablets record plunder coming back from these wars. After Amar-Sin's 5th year, there are no more, but the armies keep going out. Shu-Sin comes to the throne, and in his 4th year he builds a wall. The year is named for it. So is the next, and the one after that. 3 years of the calendar, one wall. The scribes call it the one that keeps the Tidnum away after an Amorite people. Nobody has ever found it. No stretch of wall anybody can stand next to. Everything known about it comes from 3 texts: a year name, a temple inscription, and a letter. The Amorites are already inside the country. 600 of them turn up by name in the state's own paperwork, drawing rations like everybody else. A dozen of them guard the king. Ibbi-Sin takes the throne. East of Susa, in the Zagros, is Shimashki. The last king fought it and won. Every city writes the king's name on its tablets. And one after another, they stop. The first goes in Ibbi-Sin's 2nd year, Eshnunna in his 3rd, and Susa with it, taken by Shimashki. Drehem the livestock office in his 4th, Umma in his 5th, Girsu in his 6th, with no sign of a fight. Nippur, where kings go for their blessing, in his 8th. After that, the only place still writing his name is Ur. The barley price is still normal in his 5th year. 12 months later, it is 15 times higher. By his 7th, it is 30 times, and payments are being made in dates and oil. His 17th year is named for a victory. The Amorites, who have never built cities, have submitted to Ibbi-Sin, king of Ur. By his 24th year, Ibbi-Sin is king of one city. A coalition comes for it, led from Shimashki. The later texts put Kindatu in command. Wuli found the burning. In the sacred precinct, the buildings had gone up in fire, and the gold plating was torn off the walls. In the ashes lay stone hammers with gold still on them, and weights split by the heat. The royal tombs underneath had been dug into from the floors above. Even so, a burnt quarter is not a burnt city. Ibbi-Sin is taken east into the highlands towards Anshan. Nothing records how he died. The god goes with him. Nana's statue is carried out of the temple. Nobody would know. except that a king of Ibbi-Sin, a generation later, writes down that he brought it back. An Elamite garrison sits in Ur for about 10 years. Then Ishbi-Erra, an officer of Ibbi-Sin's who had set himself up at Ibbi-Sin, drives them out and takes the city. Somewhere in this, Ur-Nammu's great stele falls. Wuli's men found it in pieces across the site. One fragment lay sealed under a floor laid 600 years after the city fell. Beyond that, nobody can say when it came down. And the scribes write laments. 5 of them survive, every copy written out by students long after. In them the gods hold a meeting and decide the city will fall, and the gods of Ur plead for it and lose. One line prices the temple. The destroyers counted the house of Nana as worth only 30 shekels. At Ibbi-Sin, the kings take up Ur's forms and make themselves gods. The King List gets written forward, and the one line of kingship passing city to city arrives at Ibbi-Sin. Then Lhasa grows, and its king Gungunum takes Ur off them. Ur itself was not left empty. Houses went up over the burnt ground, and the ziggurat stayed up. The city kept its harbour and its moon god, and Wuli found a tablet there dated to the reign of Alexander. What lasted longest was the machine. The measures, the accounting, the scribal training, the shape of a law code. The kingdoms that came after ran on what Ur had built. Sumer had never been one country passing its kingship along like an inheritance. Ur wrote itself into the line anyway, and that is what survived. To support more episodes like this, please share the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a like. I'd also be glad to hear your thoughts in the comments.